Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Here's Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. Minimum wage to be put under the microscope in Antigua and Barbuda. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Thursday, 24th February 2022. Details when we return.
Hubbard's Multi-Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies Compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
Welcome back. Antigua and Barbuda's Attorney General Frederick Benjamin says minimum wage advisory committee to begin deliberations in days with a view to addressing the minimum wage in light of the uncontrollable increasing cost of living.
We must address this issue because we must give consideration to the increasing cost of living and inflation. Discussions will begin within the next couple of days, and the committee will meet. They will have the authority to invite persons, assessors, accountants, and any other person or body whom they think can give them information, economists, for example, give them information as to come with a realistic national minimum wage. My government, as this government is concerned, we, however, will look at the reality of the situation. We know that there is COVID. What it is done, our economy will be rebounding, and we shall look at it to make certain that all workers in this land, having discussions with all appropriate stakeholders, will earn a minimum wage which will make them enjoy a reasonable standard of living to purchase what they can.
On Sunday last, the Dominican Republic authorities commenced the construction of a border wall to address the issues of human and other contraband smuggling from Haiti.
The Dominican government began building a wall that will cover almost half of the 392-kilometer border with Haiti, its only land neighbor, to stop irregular migration and the smuggling of goods, weapons, and drugs. While the two countries share the island of Hispaniola, they are worlds apart in terms of development. Crime-plagued Haiti is one of the poorest nations in the Americas, while the Dominican Republic, a popular Caribbean tourist destination, has prospered in recent decades amid marked political stability. Many Haitians cross the border in search of work in the fields or in construction industry in the Dominican Republic. About 500,000 Haitians and tens of thousands of their descendants live in the Dominican Republic, a Spanish-speaking nation of about 11 million people, according to the most recent immigration survey conducted in 2018.
Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley says natural gas will provide the energy needed to assist in rebuilding economies as the world emerges from the COVID-19 pandemic.
Dr. Rowley said as a country impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, Trinidad and Tobago can identify with the theme for this year's summit, championing natural gas post-COVID-19 recovery and sustainable development.
Pre-COVID-19, the domestic energy sector, based on the government strategies, was enjoying a major upturn. The pandemic curtailed this momentum by delaying the implementation of new upstream projects.
Prime Minister Rowley said the pandemic affected this momentum by delaying the implementation of new upstream projects. He added, however, that recovery is on track.
In the medium to long term, several gas projects are in the appraisal and sanctioning phases. These include deepwater projects with estimated gas reserves of 6.6 trillion cubic feet and the Manatee cross-border field, which adjoins the Venezuelan Lauren field.
Over in Guyana, the Opposition People's National Congress called on the Ali administration to abandon the gas-to-shore project and explore other viable options to utilize the country's natural gas resources. Gordon Mosley of News Source Guyana reports.
The party's position was made known today during a press conference by executive member of the party, Gary Best, who was responding to an announcement last week by the government that the project will get off the ground by the end of this year.
From this announcement, it is clear that the government intends to stubbornly forge ahead, ignoring the several red flags raised by independent analysts and technical experts on the project's costs, design, and viability.
Mr. Best said the country must not suffer the consequences of losing billions of dollars again, as it did with the Phil Skelton estate and the fiber optic cable projects. Best said the party has consulted with experts on the ground, and those experts have all highlighted less costly and more viable options to utilize the country's natural gas resources. In particular, the PNC reform believes that the use of ISO containers to ferry liquefied natural gas to shore is a much less expensive and more environmentally friendly transportation method, noting that the containers are seen in the industry as the easiest and more flexible means of conveyance to transport gases.
Apart from the massive cost savings relative to gas pipelines, the LNG tank container option would allow the country to export excess gas to several overseas markets. Clearly, this is a better option since such export is not possible in the pipeline project.
According to the PNC reform executive, the government has departed from parliamentary norms and is seeking to determine the future of the nation's oil and gas resources unilaterally.
This is a patent violation of this constitution, which is based on the philosophy of inclusive governance. It breaches Article 13 and other provisions of the Constitution. The PNCR therefore calls upon the government to immediately consult, discuss, and relook at the pipeline proposal in the light of the existence of a superior method of utilizing our nation's huge natural gas resources.
The People's National Congress therefore calls on the government to immediately consult, discuss, and relook at the pipeline proposal in the light of the existence of a superior method of utilizing the nation's huge natural gas resource, Best urged. The party is not ruling out going to the courts over the issue. There have been several questions raised about the gas ashore project as the cost continues to increase, even with the project still to get off of the ground.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Leader of St. Lucia's opposition, Alan Shastany, is questioning where the SLP administration's priorities lie. He was responding to reports that a ministerial delegation was at Expo 2020 Dubai. Prime Minister Pierre, meanwhile, has responded to criticism of the delegation's presence at the event. Zane Robulus of the DBS News World reports.
A Government of St. Lucia delegation, which includes government ministers Dr. Ernest Hilaire, Emma Hippolyte, and Richard Frederick, is currently in Dubai as part of independence activities at Expo 2020 Dubai. According to a February 18th press release from Export St. Lucia, the lead government agency for Expo Dubai, the ministers would be attending a business forum which took place on Monday, as well as St. Lucia's Independence Day Cultural Showcase on Tuesday, February 22nd. The airfare and hotel accommodation for the delegation, according to the press release, was financed by the UAE government. The news of the ministerial delegation has generated much social media fodder with criticism from various quarters, including opposition supporters, about the whole affair. Prime Minister Philippe Pierre, prior to Monday's cabinet meeting, responded to the criticism.
I'm happy you asked that. That actually wasn't our being. That was done by the former government. The former government was the one who created the whole budget for them. The budget was done by the former minister in charge of the CIP. He was the one who did everything. So that's just, we just followed what they started. So the idea of the money spent was something that wasn't our being. In fact, many of the expenses had already been incurred when they go into government.
Though he has not taken issue with the cost of St. Lucia's participation at Expo Dubai, opposition leader Alan Shastany, however, has called out the SLP administration for what he says is its hypocrisy.
While in opposition, the Labour Party demonized the DSH project, particularly how ambitious it was in being able to develop the South. And I think that on many occasions they said, we're trying to recreate Dubai in the South. And it's interesting to note how many times the Minister of Investment has already been to Dubai since being in government. And the question is Dubai good enough for him, but not good enough for the people in the south, or good enough for the people in St. Lucia? So I don't understand the logic of the criticism of that project. When he wouldn't have to travel to Dubai, we could actually have a Caribbean version of Dubai, a solution version of Dubai in the south.
The opposition leader has also questioned the presence of tourism officials in Dubai under the pretext of growing the tourism industry.
St. Lucia has never received any kind of numbers of arrivals from Dubai, or the Middle East for that matter of fact, nor do I know that there's any other Caribbean island that has a successful track record in attracting tourism from the Middle East. When one considers that we haven't even taken advantage of the recovery in the U.S. market. I mean, here it is that we have an unprecedented amount of airlift from the United States, and we're only running a 50% load factor on the flights. So one would think that that's the strategy would be to get up to the States as quickly as possible, to try to invigorate that market, to stimulate that market, to fulfill the opportunities that we have. Because certainly if we continue to run at a 50% load factor, the likelihood is that we're going to lose some of the airlift coming into the summer and into the fall.
According to the leader of the opposition, the decisions taken by the SLP administration regarding Expo Dubai show where their priorities lie. For the DBS News World, I am Zaid Romulus.
Now is not the time to allow Haiti to fall off the agenda of the international community. These are the words of the United Nations Special Representative for Haiti, Helen Lalin, to the Security Council.
Addressing the Security Council recently, she disclosed that the situation in the country remains fraught and highly polarized, despite some signs of progress.
Negotiations among proponents of competing transition governance models have now reached the stage where success will be determined by their collective willingness to compromise. The contours of a common vision shared by all will ultimately depend on Haitian stakeholders placing the national interest above their own aspirations and being flexible on the finer points of the process. For Haiti to emerge from the acute political and institutional crisis in which it's plunged, it is imperative that all Haitian leaders resolve to engage constructively with one another to stir the country towards a process that will allow elections to occur. The international community must also continue to engage with the Haitian government and other stakeholders, not only to support efforts to create the necessary security and political conditions for the holding of national elections, but also to ensure that urgent structural reforms are undertaken to tackle gang violence, address impunity and corruption, strengthen the justice system, and transform the economy in a sustainable manner. Now is not the time to let Haiti fall off the agenda.
Hubbard's Motor Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies Compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.